The Downhill World Cup have moved on to Canada for the third round, and Canadian riders Cindy Devine and Penny Davison both put in good times in front of the home crowd, finishing fourth and third respectively. In a very tight competition, the joint series leader, Italian Giovanni Benazzi, could do no better than fifth, finishing half a second behind Devine. While the other leader, Germany's Regina Stiefel, benefited from a course that required a lot of spinning out in the big gears, as she took second ahead of Davison in a time of 7 minutes and 8 seconds. However, it was the American Missy Gio, returning from a 30-day ban for bad behaviour, who liked the course best. Unlike many, she had no trouble handling her bike when it hit the rough surfaces, and had enough in hand on the pedalling sections to finish 4 seconds up on Stiefel. In the men's competition, the Americans were completely dominant on the 5.4 kilometre course that dropped 681 metres, with a number of relatively unfamiliar names finishing in the top 20. Marin's Jake Watson was one of the first to show the Europeans how to handle this sort of course, and had he not unshipped his chain halfway down, he may well have improved on his third, 1.5 seconds behind world champion Dave Cullinan. But undoubtedly, the weirdest sight of the day was the fully rubberised John Tomac, who in his aerodynamic suit was in his element on this sort of course. He flew over the loose terrain and used all his strength on the pedalling sections to win by just 0.8 of a second in a time of 6 minutes 20 seconds. However, the Europeans still topped the overall standings, with Migliorini's 13th, enough to move him into the overall lead ahead of Benecke. Stiefel's second saw her move 12 points clear, while Deb moved up to 4th overall, despite mechanical problems that meant she could do no better than 15th here. For round 6 of the cross-country, the circus moved east to Bromont in the 92 World Championship course. Yet again, the battle at the front was between Furtado and Sidor. Though it was close on the climb, by the time they hit the tricky single-track descent, Furtado was out front, and Sidor wouldn't catch her on this sort of terrain. Behind, Caroline Alexander led the chase for the first lap, before finally slipping into 7th as Ruthie Mathis and Susan de Mattei tussled for 3rd, with Mathis doing enough on the final lap. By then, Furtado could take it easy and enjoy her 6th win out of 6. In the men's, the racing was closer. Polish rider Jan Vijek led out for the first couple of laps ahead of series leader Switzerland's Thomas Frischknecht. But close behind was a group that contained Gary Ford and John Tomac, who were both in striking distance of the series leader's blue jersey. However, as Vijek tired, it was riders from a third group that took over at the front, with round 5 winner Tinka Juarez leading out the Austrian Gerhard Zadrabilek. Behind Frischknecht, Ford was yet again impressive, but eventually lost out to the more experienced Mike Kluger in the battle for 4th. On the last lap, Zadrabilek waited till the final climb before he attacked, and Juarez had nothing left to respond with, as the GT rider, who has also won World Cup races on the road, added another trophy to his cabinet. Frischknecht's 3rd enabled him to extend his lead over Rich, while a 5th place was enough to see Gary move up to 3rd ahead of Kluger. Furtado can't improve on her maximum 300 points till the final, but with Sidor missing the next few races, the competition for 2nd is close. Back on the trail of the 7-Up BMBF Downhill Series, and we're at Craik Forest in Scotland for round 3. The course drops 200 metres in its 1.5-mile length, which starts and ends with fast fire tracks, but is joined by a rutted and rooty single track through the woods. That was made even more hazardous by the extremely muddy conditions. The clever money will be on the riders who can survive this and are still there to spin out on the fire track. In the women's race, the series leader Deb Murrell wasn't here, as she was competing in the World Cup events in North America. So the riders knew there were extra points available, and Tracy Hardcastle was disappointed to have placed no better than 2nd at the end of her run, 7 seconds down on Sarah Cartmel's time of 6 minutes and 7 seconds. But Tracy's Proflex teammate Karen Van Meerbeck soon righted that situation. Flying through the single track, she was smooth enough to ensure she had enough energy left for a final burst on the fire track and knocked 30 seconds off the lead time as she moved into first. Final woman off was Pace's Sian Roberts, who knew that a top 3 result would see her move into the overall lead, so she took no chances through the woods, but had left herself too much to do on the run-in, finishing 8 seconds down on Karen in a time of 5 minutes 45 seconds.
The top of the course was really technical but very slippy compared to this last bit. A lot of forest tracks, so it was very hard pedalling.
But you were really pushing the big gears.
I was trying. I only had a smaller ring on compared to other people, but I think you're better off spinning down stuff like that than pushing really hard. So.
With the pressure off, Karen produced her best downhill race of the season, and after a puncture in Wales, she moved back up to 3rd overall in the series, while Sian takes the lead. Though with Deb returning for the final, all of the top 3 could take the title. In the men's competition, there were also riders missing. Jason McCroy was down with a bug, while Dave Hemming and Andrew Kiffing were in America for the World Cup downhills. Paul Plunkett set the benchmark with a time of 4 minutes and 51 seconds. After that, things were going to get closer, but Plunkett's lead didn't last long when the very next rider, Proflex's John Pennyfather, shaved a further 5 seconds off the lead. He was undoubtedly the fastest rider through the woods, and the Irish rider knew he was in for a good time as he gave it his all on the fire track. Another unfamiliar name, Will Longden, was next off. He is part of a group of riders out of Sheffield that includes Steve Peat and Chris Horsfield, and they obviously concentrate on downhilling. Will was again smooth in the woods, and a final burst saw him move into the second with a time of 4 minutes 49 seconds. A puncture in Wales had seen Richard Thacray drop down the rankings, but with Jason away, he was determined to score big points here. The pace rider wasn't as smooth as the previous 2 in the woods, but his superior fitness ensured that he was only 4 seconds down on the leader as he slipped ahead of Plunkett into 3rd. Former motocrosser Alistair McLean was the next to go close. His fully suspended dual response ensured he was comfortable over the tree roots, but on the fire track you can see how it was sapping the power of the big rider, and he could only manage to move into 5th with a time of 4 minutes 53 seconds. National champion Jason Shackleton had not been able to find last year's form in the previous races and wasn't helped here by his sponsorship falling through. That meant he was on a new bike for the first time, and unfamiliar with its handling, he was not as fluid as normal on the technical sections, and despite a fast run-in, he could do no better than 6th, 2 seconds down on McLean. Lying 5th overall, Kona's Chris Horsfield has been one of the surprises of the season, but after a good section in the woods, he was obviously tiring on his way into the finish and could only move into 7th, a further second down on Shackleton. Diamondback's Nick Craig was next off, and though he had been concentrating more on cross-country than downhilling this season, he fancied his chances here, on a course that put a lot of emphasis on fitness. He was undoubtedly the fastest on the fire track, but had lost time in the mud and so dropped into 5th, 5 seconds down on the leader. The last seeded rider off was GT's Simon Kipling, who flew into the woodage section just that bit too fast and couldn't quite make the bend. That collision cost him a couple of seconds and will have disrupted his rhythm. He tried to get it back together in the muddy section, but by the end it had obviously taken it out of him and he had to settle for 9th. So did John know he was on a good run?
It's always difficult to know how well your run's going. There was a couple of boggy bits where the bike just kind of nearly stopped, but I think it's pretty much the same for everybody going through the same bog. But once it came through it, just went for it then.
Most of the riders were saying that through that technical section in the wood, that it was, if you did lose your line, then it was very difficult to get back on.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it. The difference, like from the practice lap I did yesterday, and then coming down on the real thing today, there was like the roots had just suddenly appeared from nowhere. There was just so many roots everywhere. Just to be really cautious on your line, because if we came off there, you're losing 10 seconds when you drop it, and then it's a downhill gone. So you might as well just take a bit of caution going through there, and then get onto the quick stuff and just let the bike go then.
Well, the Scottish course pulled a couple of lesser-known riders to the top in what was the closest race of the season. But in the overall standings, it was all the familiar names up there. Jason still holds the lead despite a no-show, and Nick's 5th was enough to move him into 2nd overall. We stay in Craik Forest next week, and we're back to going uphill as the 7 Up BMBF National Point Series enters its penultimate round.